next step on the F1 project. We're still working out the rear suspension. In the last video, we showed the trailing arms and got the front cross member built, and so now we're actually getting the rear end set up. And this rear end housing is one we had, took it out of a 74 F100. It's in an old frame that we've had, so wanted to use it, and I had some Mosier axles, some drive stud axles that we had taken out of the race car when we went from 31 spline to 35 spline. So I had a really good set of axles that need to be used. So what I've done is I've narrowed the rear end to fit the axles, and it'll be a decent width for this truck, and I can alter the bed sides and so forth to make it work. So trying to use up what we've got, because if you just start ordering things, it gets expensive quick. So anyway, the rear end housing out of the F100 was a centered chunk, not a centered pinion. Both axles were the same length. So when we cut this down, we took I think it was like 6 inches roughly out of one side and 2 inches out of the other side, just roughly, to make it a centered pinion. And you can see that, you know, our drive shaft's going to run right through the center of the tunnel. And what we've done, we cleaned the housing up, and I've got a jig to square the housings and put the ends in. And all we've done here, I just got some tack welds on these housing ends, and we've also started mocking up our disc brake brackets just to see if they were going to work. The reason I've not gone ahead and welded these, with the alignment bar right now, they are perfect, but I can almost tell you by the time we weld the perches on, build the panhard bar mounts, weld that on, do the coilover shock brackets, weld those on, probably put a little bit of a brace on this rear end, just, you know, because we can. You never know when it might end up being in something with some horsepower. By the time we do all that, I can almost promise you the rear end housing will not be perfectly square. And if it is not, then all we've got to do is cut these tack welds loose and square it up and do our final welding, and it'll be in good shape. So anyway, we've got it, we've got all of this stuff measured out, squared up. We've got the perches tacked in, got 4 tacks on each one. Got the pinion angle set. When you do this setup and you have the bars level, you set the pinion at 1 degree up, and it'll be correct. And that comes from people who are a lot smarter than I am, and I've done it and it works. So if you decide to send me some questions about it, that's the only answer I'm going to have is, you know, I listen to people who are smarter than I am. And the proof is in, you know, having done it and knowing that it works well. So anyway, that's where we're at. We can now bust all this apart, weld the cross, or tack the cross member in the frame, and then start laying everything out under the truck. And at that point, we'll be building, I think I'm going to go ahead and go coilovers. I think that's actually going to be the most economical and definitely the quickest for this setup. So we can go ahead and start setting up the coilover brackets and do the panhard bar and everything. So and then when everything's done and we're happy where it's at, we can go back and do all this final welding and check everything. So we'll continue on to the next step. Okay, so we got the cross member tacked in the frame. We got the trailing arms in, rear end is in and mocked up. So next step is to get it measured for center and go ahead and start building a panhard bar today. I think that's going to be today's project, is get the panhard bar built and all the associated mounts with that, and also check and see whether or not we're going to have to cut a recess in these fenders for tire clearance. Okay, here's how far we got today. Got the panhard bar built, and everything's tacked in place. You can see the brackets. Those clamps are actually in the way, but you see there. And then this is our bracket for the rear end, and we've got plenty of adjustments. Most likely I'm probably going to come down on one more hole and probably knock these brackets loose and drill a hole, another adjustment hole lower. It's just good to have a lot of adjustments when you're setting a car up, because you just don't know exactly where things are going to end up unless you've built the exact same thing before. But anyway, everything's just tacked in, of course. Real pleased with the way it's laying out. I've got so much clearance under this bed, because it basically has no bed, that I can actually run that panhard bar above the top of the housing, and that makes it a lot easier. These things are kind of hard to snake around in a muscle car or pickup truck with a full bed. The one on my 49 was a nightmare because clearance is such a premium. But anyway, that should work well. I've got the cross member for the shocks just clamped in place and tacked. Got the lower shock mounts tacked on, and these shocks are just some I had here. They don't they're not the shocks I'm going to use, but they are, as far as I know, they're the same dimensions, other than the bolt holes, mounting holes aren't the same, and the spring rate's a lot stiffer. But I've just kind of got those stuck in place. Ignore the long bolts, just to get an idea where everything was going to sit. And pretty happy with it. Again, we'll have to get some machine spacers to get the shocks spaced off of the lower mounts exactly like we wanted, and probably a little bit off of the top mounts too. And I can scoot this cross member any way I want to. It's not even tacked in yet, but that's the way it's going to go. They're going to the tops are going to lay in front of the cross member, and then the bottoms behind the rear end housing, and I believe that'll give me clearance for everything. So tire clearance is close, but I believe we're going to be able to work that out. I do like the look, and we can tuck that bed in a little bit if we need to. So anyway, I'm going to stop it here for this week and continue on, hopefully some more maybe next week.